Ibnu Rawahah was a writer who lived in an environment where literacy was rare. He is also a fluent poet. The strands of his verses slide off his tongue powerfully and are beautifully heard. Since he embraced Islam, he devoted his ability to sing to serve the glory of Islam. Rasulullah SAW loved and enjoyed his poetry and often asked him to be more diligent in making poetry. The Islamic army advanced to the battlefield of Mu'tah. When the Muslims from a distance have been able to see their enemies, they estimated the size of the Roman army at around 200,000. Because according to the reality their army ranks seemed to have no end and it seemed as if they were not numbered. The Muslims saw that their number was not small, then fell silent, and some of them blurted out saying, "It's good that we send a messenger to Rasulullah SAW, reporting that there is a large number of enemies. Maybe we can get additional troop assistance, or if we are ordered to keep advancing, we will obey." However, Ibn Rawahah, like the arrival of noon, got up, stood between the lines of his troops and said, "Brothers and brothers, for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in fact we fight against our enemies not based on numbers, strength or numbers. We do not fight them, but because we defend our religion, by embracing it we have been glorified by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Come on, let's go. One of the two goodness we must achieve, victory or martyrdom in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala." With cheers, the Muslims, who were few in number but great in faith, agreed. They shouted, "Indeed, by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what Ibn Rawahah said is true." Thus, the troops continued on to their destination, with far fewer numbers facing the enemy of 200,000 that the Romans had managed to muster for a devastating battle that had no equal. The two armies, met, then the battle raged between the two. At that time he picked up the banner of war from Ja'far's right hand, while the war had reached its peak. When he was fighting as a soldier, this Ibn Rawahah lunged forward and backward, left and right without hesitation and care. Now that he is the commander-in-chief of the entire army, who will be held responsible for the life and death of his troops, for the sake of being seen the greatness of the Roman army, it immediately seemed as if a sense of dread and doubt crossed him. However, that moment was only an instant, then he summoned up all his spirit and strength and swept all worries away from himself, as he shouted, "I have sworn, O myself, to go to the battlefield, but why do I see you reject heaven? O self, if you are not killed, you will surely die. This is the true death that you have been waiting for a long time. The time has come for what you have been dreaming of all this time. If you follow in the footsteps of those two, that's a true knight." He also advanced to attack the Romans with courage. If Allah SWT had not decreed that that day would be the day when he promised to go to heaven, he would have continued to slash his enemies with his sword, killing a large number of them. However, the time of departure had arrived, which announced the beginning of his journey back to the presence of Allah, so he ascended as a martyr. His body fell to the ground, but his Holy Spirit and the centurion ascended to the substance of the Most Compassionate, the Most High, and reached the peak of his dream. While a fierce battle was raging on the land of Balka, in Sham, Rasulullah SAW was sitting with his friends in Medina while talking to them. Suddenly the conversation that was going on peacefully stopped. The Prophet SAW was silent. Her eyes were wet with tears. He lifted his face with a wink of both eyes, to let go of the tears that fell due to grief and pity. While looking around at the faces of his companions with emotion, the Prophet said, "Zaid bin Haritsah held the banner of war. He fought with him until he died as a martyr. Then it was taken over by Ja'far, and he also fought with him until he was martyred too. The Prophet was silent for a while, then continued his words. Then Abdullah bin Rawahah held the banner and he fought with the banner, until finally he too was martyred. Then Rasulullah was silent again for a while his eyes were shining with joy, serenity and longing. Then he said, "The three of them were taken up to my place to heaven." Thanks for watching. Don't forget like, comment, share and subscribe.